And I want to talk about the past, but mostly about the future, because this is, after all, a peer preview. I don't think I'm sharing yet. Is it sharing, Jeremiah? My PowerPoint?
Unfortunately, not for me.
If it ain't for you, it ain't for anybody. It says I'm sharing. How about, that looks better, yeah? Has that come through yet, folks? No? Jeremiah?
Yes, we can see it, David.
Okay, thanks, Carmen. And again, if Jeremiah didn't say it, please, I'll save a few minutes, even though we're running late, for questions. So please put them into the Q&A and chat, and Jeremiah will curate them and send some my way. Okay, look, let's do the quick review. 2020 has been a tough year for the world and for America and for DOE and for BTO because of COVID, of course, and because of the deaths, the social distancing, the pandemic, the economic impact. It's just, we all know that. And for BTO, that had a lot of implications, of course, all of the above. Luckily, everybody that I'm aware of in the BTO staff and hopefully extended family has stayed healthy this year, and that's first. But it's been a hard year, but we still were able to get a lot done. I won't spend too much time showing off, but I got to spend some time showing off because BTO has really accomplished a lot. I got a long list here. So we got our connected communities, FOAT, and look, by the way, some of these you see I wrote accomplishments and other progress. You know, we can argue what's an accomplishment versus what's a progress towards a future accomplishment. The only thing that matters in the end for accomplishments is making, in our world, is making buildings more energy efficient and more demand flexible, and all the consequences that come from that, including affordability, environmental performance, resilience, comfort, et cetera, et cetera. So you can be the judge here with me as to which of these are accomplishments in their own right and which of them are progress towards future accomplishments. So we got our connected communities, 65 million demonstration, $65 million worth of demonstration projects for grid interactive efficient buildings out. The secretary announced that last month in Charlotte. Benefit was 2, plural. On the FY19, we got rolling on $50 million worth of projects that we're very excited about. And those are being worked on as we speak. And then FY20 is, we issued that's up to $80 million. And we got, I hope this isn't a state secret, Karma, that I'm not supposed to share, but we just got a wealth of concept papers, over 800 concept papers. We've never seen anything like it. The most benefits ever done before, which in turn was its own record, was 425, I want to say 400 and change last year, and we doubled that. And so look, for us, that's at our end of it, that's an embarrassment of riches. For you, I know what that means. The odds get that much tougher if you're an applicant. But we do have more money, and if our budget is good in 21, we'll be able to even go beyond what we stated. So we're excited about that. I haven't, Karma, if you can unmute yourself, have we had a chance to look at the quality of the concept papers or just the quantity so far? I know they just came in. Is the quality strong too?
We don't know yet, TBD.
TBD, okay. But over 800. Proving Ground is a new FOA that we've never done before, in which we're still working on that, on the evaluation, and that looks at field validation, working with state and local governments and their private partners. That's new. Empowered is one we did jointly with the Solar Office and the Vehicles Office, focusing on workforce training. That's we'll be announcing that quite soon, but that's those decisions are just being wrapped up. Again, focusing on workforce. Switching from process to financial process to substance. Energy Plus, that workhorse, we've been doing building energy modeling, we collectively, since before there was a Department of Energy. It's a core responsibility of DOE, and this year we were able to make a very important upgrade using Python so that it's more adaptable for end users, and the EMS can be more powerful and more flexible. Amir Roth can tell you a lot more than I can about that. As you know, the NFRC labels windows. Well, there's a new AERC that rates window attachments. And those, the first one got certified just recently. It was a Hunter Douglas product in window attachments. And we all know whether it's a static world or a dynamic world, window attachments play a great role in addition to windows themselves. Look, on field validation, we did a lot. This has been a priority of Alex Fitzsimmons, our DAS. And it represents, I think, an important change. A few years ago, DOE was focused on early stage R&D. And of course, in structures complicated like buildings, with all those pesky human beings fooling with their buildings because they think they live and work there, it's essential to validate the technologies in the field. And we do a lot there. There's an EU-wide strategy that Amy Harone and our staff developed working with Alex and the other offices at ERE. But I pick a couple here, but it really permeates everything we do much more than even a few years ago. And I think it will continue on building codes. We continue to do our field validation studies, working with many of you to see how people actually implement building codes. Where do they come up short? And where do they come up long? Where are they beating the code? Our proving ground flow that I mentioned earlier, focus on field validation. So a lot there. That's been a big, nice change. Our advanced building construction, we have specific projects. They're just getting rolling now, so it's not quite an accomplishment yet, but we've also built a collaborative working with the Rocky Mountain Institute and leaders in the private sector. Stay tuned on that. I'm going to talk about eRobot in a minute. Of course, the solar decathlon. And I think you know that we do it both virtually and for design and in place, and that continues to grow across the country, around the world. And it's also going in a different way. It's really attracting talent from a lot of college kids and grad school kids and young adults in a way that just gets better each time. And the virtual approach, we did it anyway, and then when COVID showed up, it turned to be very helpful. Again, under Alex's leadership, several offices, including BTO, developed an initiative with NASIO to work with the states to help stimulate economic growth without considerable new resources because our budget did not go up. We're doing a GEB roadmap that's due out in a couple of months, so stay tuned. Oh, these are a little visual out of order. We published 4 RDOs. Those are sometimes called roadmaps, research and development opportunity documents. And many of you helped us do that. So thank you. Solid state lighting, Brian Walker left, building energy modeling that Amir Roth led, Windows, the inimitable Mark LaFrance led, and Envelope Sven Mumi led. So we're very glad to have that leadership. Our National Energy Codes Conference went virtual every Thursday, except for Thanksgiving. At 1 o'clock Eastern is a new session. There's still, Jeremy and Ramon, there's 5 or 6 left doing important topics. In fact, the one Tuesday, the 24th, is looking at international code developments to see what we can learn from abroad. We've done a lot of webinars. They're not the same as meeting in person. We're not pretending they are, but they do have their advantages. Of course, our workhorse that Jonathan Cohn leads, Better Building Residential Network, has been hard at work with all the Better Buildings team. We had a series on thermal energy storage. We have a series now on how do we look at not just operational issues, but the stubborn issues of embodied energy and carbon and life cycle analysis. I don't even know where to start on technologies. We've made a lot of progress from compression-free air conditioning to solid state dryers to thin triple windows and films. There's been enormous, I don't have enough room in this slide or time today. On COVID-related research, that's taken a lot of forms. You heard yesterday about the virtual diagnostics, that's COVID related, but also the work that Eric Whirling leads, Building America, looking at ventilation and other ways to make sure that buildings, as their operations are being changed to reflect COVID responsibilities, with higher ventilation, how do we make sure we can manage any energy penalties that might happen? Stay tuned on eRobot that Assistant Secretary Simmons announced yesterday. And we've brought in some new staff. We'll bring in more. And as I say, we've stayed healthy. And I feel like that's an accomplishment. I hope you all have stayed healthy in your workplaces. And there was a lot more last year. But it's not a review, it's a preview. Oh, and here's our brochure again, if I could pitch that. The brochure does not include a list of last year's accomplishments, but I'm still pitching it anyway. Look, it's not a review, it's a preview. And before I get into the whole preview, I want to zoom in on eRobot that Daniel Simmons announced yesterday. Nice acronym, Mary Hubbard and NREL team. And you heard this yesterday. And look, I know you love hearing from me, but we're going to show you a video instead. So Jeremiah, are you ready to show the video from here?
Justin's going to show the video, but yes, we are.
Affordable, comfortable, environmentally friendly, and superior energy performance. That is the future of buildings. Buildings are the largest sector of the U.S. energy economy, with more than 126 million buildings spanning the United States. They use 74% of our nation's electricity, account for 39% of total energy use, and 35% of CO2 emissions from energy consumption, more than any other sector in America. In terms of energy and climate, buildings present a big challenge. Fortunately, necessity is the mother of invention, and new innovations hold promise for cutting costs and preserving our planet. Available retrofit technologies and approaches could significantly cut an average building's energy use, but only a small portion of existing buildings undergo envelope retrofits. Increasing our envelope retrofit rates and reducing energy use in the existing building stock by just 20% could save up to $80 billion per year in energy bills. But many obstacles stand in the way of these upgrades. For one, today's envelope retrofit products and processes are not only disruptive to homeowners and building occupants, they can also create health and safety hazards for construction workers who frequently need to access tight spaces. So, how do we deliver envelope improvements with less pain and more gain? Enter the American-made buildings prize called eRobot. Launched by the Department of Energy's Building Technologies Office, the eRobot prize calls on innovators to use robotics to develop minimally invasive, low-cost, and holistic building envelope retrofit solutions. We are counting on you to make retrofits safer, faster, more convenient, and more reliable. This two-phased program provides a total of $5 million in cash prizes and support to competing teams and network partners for solutions that create greater job opportunities, improve safety and efficiency for workers, and reduce building retrofit costs. Have an idea? Join the American-made Buildings Prize eRobot today.
That was great. And I just want to say, if anybody who says government can't move quickly, look, the Assistant Secretary announced that program 22 hours ago. And look, NREL and Mary Hubbard already produced a video. So that's pretty impressive, isn't it? Okay, let me get back to my, and we will, of course, post the video as well as the one yesterday. And I hope you'll share that because that is an open competition and we need input. So real quickly, can you see my slides again? Do I have the screen? Yes?
Yes, we can see your slides.
Yes.
Okay. So I think you know this. I won't spend too much time. Why robotics? But look, quite simply, and I wrote an essay about this in the brochure. these technological advances, they're not revolutionary. They've been around in other fields, in manufacturing, certainly in telecom and avionics, in medical care for a number of years, if not decades. They haven't migrated, however, to the building, construction, and retrofit sector. So what we're doing is part inventing, but it's part migration and transplanting. And there are a lot of advantages there, including, of course, as you can see from the video, as you know from experience, a lot of these situations are impossible for workers to get to or disruptive to a homeowner or a building owner, and they want no part of it. And so there's also, it's a very significant convenience issue, one that can make or break energy efficiency upgrades, as well as all the other advances, and as well as the safety and comfort of workers to keep them out of more dangerous environments. I won't go through the fine print here on how it works, how one enters or becomes a connector to bring together other people, but there's $5 million waiting for bright people who can help us with these solutions. So I'll refer you instead, and it's a two-phase process with a down select. And so I will refer you instead to the website and or to Mary Hubbard and her team at NREL, who is organizing this prize. So we hope you will participate and share that. So that's one of the things we're excited about. Let me talk more, let me spend the rest of my time trying to preview the future. As we know, one should, as the line goes, one should never make predictions, especially about the future, but here you go. I'm gonna talk about some things that I assume are going to be a bigger part of our future and will continue to grow. I think we'll be a very busy place. But certainly, we're looking at climate change and its urgency. And, you know, this whole list I'm about to show you, these are my own personal views as to what the future holds. And they're based on all sorts of factors. And we talked yesterday, Danielle was asked about the election and transition. That's one of them, but it's far from the only. As we look at changes, as the world gets hotter and climate change becomes a deepening crisis, as the economy shifts, as technologies evolve. So there are a lot of things at work here, in addition to changes the election will bring. So the urgency of climate change continues to grow, and this will permeate a lot of things we do, of course. We could spend as much time as humanly possible on it, and I won't do that. One element of that, though, is what's the role for efficiency and renewables in a world, in a country that pays more attention to climate? I think it's going to continue to grow. I'm sure it will. And one element of that, of course, is integrating renewables into buildings, and demand flexibility and storage. Electric vehicles will all be part of this integration challenge. That's what we do on our grid interactive efficient building work, our GEB work. And but it's not the it's far from the only work that we do and others around us will do on this issue of integrating, using buildings to integrate of renewables and other climate solutions. And even as I look now at my slide, I wrote climate change. But, you know, just like our field evolved a couple of decades ago, we used to be energy conservation, and then of course it evolved to energy efficiency. Climate change, I notice, as you have, is I think increasingly changing to be described as climate crisis, as the problem deepens and the urgency for it accelerates. We have already, look, existing buildings just remains as thorny a problem as there is in our field. I don't have to tell anybody at a BTO event that. We're doing our best at BTO, and it is far from sufficient. As Winston Churchill once said, sometimes doing our best isn't good enough. Sometimes we must do what is necessary. And so that's a reminder on the thorny issues of how do we upgrade existing buildings. And we have several initiatives there at BTO, including of course, our advanced building construction work that you just saw, of which eRobot is part, and other ways to do retrofits. But this will permeate our entire field, including innovative financing, including looking at the barriers between landlords and tenants, whether commercial or residential. Of course, there are enormous equity issues here in terms of making sure that different building types and communities have an opportunity to upgrade their energy performance. Next is economic stimulus. And economic growth is always an issue, and energy efficiency can play a key role there in lowering, as much as we can eliminate waste, we can eliminate economic waste too, not just energy and environmental waste. But we may or may not see stimulus activity from Congress, and it may or may not be relevant to the energy field. We'll find out. Of course, again, not a new issue, but the need to be diverse, to have equitable activities and solutions, and to be inclusive of different perspectives, I think will only grow as an issue. And equity takes a lot of forms, as does diversity and inclusion. But equity, I think in our field of clean energy and energy efficiency, to a large part means, are our solutions helping all parts of the community? Sure, good, interactive, efficient buildings connect well with smart homes, and there are a lot of affluent people who can use smart technologies to enhance their photovoltaics or their energy performance, but that's not good enough. We need to have an equitable approaches that allow others to do that. And with diversity, that's not just about our workforce and I think the workforce of those around us, but again, about diverse perspectives and diverse backgrounds to help tackle the problems of energy performance. COVID, I've already talked about. We hope with the new news from Moderna and Pfizer that next time we meet, we can happily look back at the end of the COVID pandemic era, but we're not there yet. And it will still have be part of our world, whether it's economic or ventilation systems or whatever it might be. I expect to see more on international engagement. Candidate Biden, of course, prominently committed to rejoining the Paris engagement. We'll see how that plays, but I think that's a pretty safe bet. And for us, there's a lot of implications there. We're already quite active with the International Energy Agency. Alex Fitzsimmons sits on the steering committee of the IEA's Energy Efficiency Hub. Jack Mayernick and myself and many others, Monica Newcomb and many others at BTO and you are very active internationally. We'll continue doing that. And another area is low GWP refrigerants. So there are issues beyond just CO2 and efficiency that the building sector are part of. What can I say about resilience? There's no Hurricane Strength 5 right now. I didn't look at the news this morning that hit Central America last night, and we know what. Look, we're in Zetas and Etas. We've used up the whole alphabet of named storms this year. It's been a terrible, destructive, and deadly year, and we know the role for resilience, whether it's hurricanes or wildfires, et cetera, will have a big impact on buildings and on building energy efficiency performance. I think the future for DOE and for us will include a greater responsibility with deployment and market transformation. I already talked about field validation, work that we've done. We'll continue to do that, but there's more, that's part of it certainly. And our home energy score, our building asset score system, our consumer facing tools, the Energy Star portfolio manager that EPA has, these are all part of deployment, but I think the federal government will get more active in deployment and more active in market transformation, working with many others, of course, utilities, state government, et cetera, et cetera. Standards and codes, I think, will be a much busier area in the upcoming several years here. We expect to be quite busy on that. And by standards, I mean, in this case, well, I mean it several ways. One is voluntary standards like ISO 50001. I meant in this case, mandatory appliance and equipment standards, but all of the above. And building codes, both the model code and the technical assistance we provide, I think will be busier. Inside Ball, let me just try to translate this list into what I see happening at BTO, and I'd be interested in your views. I'm going to click through quickly because I'm running out of time. Oop, a little too quickly. So I think BTO and ERE are going to have a bigger role going forward because of everything on that left column, these forces that are at work. I'll say I hope we do. I think we have a lot to contribute. We've been contributing for a number of years. I've been at BTO for 5 years. Others have been here certainly longer than I have. BTO's, I think, played a very important role in our nation's energy balance. I think we will grow. I hope we will. We'll have a bigger role, I believe, at BTO in that deployment and market transformation that I noted. I think we'll be more likely to provide even more technical assistance, including to local governments. We have a panel tomorrow where we're going to hear from what they're up to, and I think I will anticipate that we can help them with the challenge they've set out. And we've worked closely with states, not just with NASIO, but with state energy offices, with state public utility commissions to work that. Monica Newcomb leads on grid interactive efficient buildings, has worked in hand in glove with state energy offices, with PUCs, and also to a lesser degree, governor's offices and others at the state level. And I think we can provide technical assistance as well as learn from them. They'll be, I anticipate we'll be much busier on the workforce issue. I already mentioned in the Empowered FOA, as well as the Benefit FOA, there are topics on workforce development. Workforce is such a gigantic issue. It means everything from somebody just out of high school, maybe in a community college, maybe not, who needs to learn the skills of proper installation of insulation or windows, all the way through to STEM, and how do we take a graduate architect from our nation's finest architecture and engineering schools and make sure they understand how to make energy efficiency and demand flexibility work in the real world. So it's a whole range of activities, and we can't do it all, but we're going to be doing a lot more. Impel, which we'll see later today, is part of that. Look, the second to last bullet is sort of really inside ball. I just think it's likely going forward, we're going to be looking at, we're going to have multiple balls in the air at any one time. We collectively, but I mean we BTO, looking at all those issues on the left and how do we maximize, optimize, balance, doing all of that, tackling climate change, respecting diversity, having equitable solutions, dealing with COVID at the same time. So it's a lot of balls in the air. And I think for all of us, the pace is going to quicken. And so I say that both as an observation, but also just to note, there's just going, I think, be more things done quickly. We'll find out if I'm right or not. And then finally, of course, a question mark on BTO budget and staffing. I've learned not to make predictions in this area. Anybody who predicted 4 years ago that the BTO budget would be 43% higher today than it was when I got here in 2016, we would have laughed at, because nobody did predict that it would grow 43% over the last 4 years. I'm perfectly willing to take credit for it because it was the period while I was director, but you know where I'm going with this. This stuff's unpredictable, and we'll see what happens there. And we hope we get the resources we need, but there's always a question mark. So that's what I see for the future. This can keep me up at night, kept me up last night thinking about the challenges before our community, before my office. And the good news is I got a lot of help here. And I shouldn't say I, there's no I here. We have a lot of help. This is some of the BTO staff. There are other contractors and others, but this is the same slide as yesterday. This is who we are. That's a good start. And to tackle these are very talented men and women, and all sorts of backgrounds. As I like to joke, we have all sorts of backgrounds. We have mechanical engineers, we have electric engineers, now we have a PhD civil engineer, but we also have economists. I'm a master of public policy, turns out, and all sorts of other skill sets that we bring. Sam is our architect in chief, Sam Rashkin, et cetera, et cetera. So we bring a lot of skills, and we're ready for anything. That's not enough. First of all, you know how to find us, I hope. If you learn nothing else from me today, if you're new to the BTO world, here's how you find us. Take a look at that list on the left and just write first.last at ee.doe.gov, and you can find us. Frankly, I don't know. I'll pick on you, Sam. I don't know if Sam is sam.rashkin or samuel.rashkin, but you can email both and he'll get back to you, and et cetera. And if you see a Maddie, she's a Madeline, you get the game. But please reach out to us, and we work for you. Assuming you are a taxpayer or a citizen or a resident or in our field, then we work for you and we want to work with you. And not only that, but I want you to work on this too. And I will not presume that all of you are on this team to tackle climate change and energy efficiency, demand flexibility, affordability, integration of renewables, electrification. I didn't make it explicit, but that's part of the integration game. But I think you all are, or you wouldn't be here. So I hope we can all work together. And again, I'll tell you why. We got a big challenge in front of us. It's a hard job. Again, taking Winston Churchill's illogical yet very truthful line, we have to do better than our best. We have to do what is necessary to tackle these problems. Thanks very much. I'm going to take a couple of questions, Jeremiah, and then we're going to turn over to our hard tech panel.
So oops. Hey, David, can you hear me okay?
I can. And also somebody email me directly with a question, but you go first and then I can go to my email.
So in the world of technical difficulties this morning, I had to reconnect. So I lost the chat. So if there's any open Q&As,
Okay.
Bruce or Justin, do you mind reading them aloud?
Yeah, I can.
Last slide up. Was it possible to leave the last slide up, or is it already?
David, just, it did go to the end of your slideshow, so you might be able to go back.
Okay. In the meantime, let me, well, maybe I'm having trouble. Okay. Can you see that last slide or no?
It has not updated on our end.
Okay. So do you have any questions? If not, I can read the one I got.
Yeah, I do have one. There was, how do you foresee the eRobot competition competing or complementing with a benefit topic on robot inspection? A number of submissions to benefit would be a better fit here. Yeah,
no, that's a very good question. And it's from our friend Ralph Muhlenson at Oregon IC. So the answer is, it's pretty inside ball here, Ralph. We are very interested in the idea of robotics. We've put that out on the street, and we didn't get the kind of results in a FOA setting that we would have liked to see. And if you were one of the applicants, we can have that conversation with you. I don't remember how many applications we got. We didn't get many, and we didn't think they did the trick. And then we became aware of the tool that is available called the American Made Challenge. There's quite a few of these going around DOE. I know the solar office has one, our hydrogen and fuel cell office has one. And then we did think, like your question submits, we did think that that was a better fit. So the answer is we're willing to try multiple tools, but we're gonna try the eRobot approach. We got $5 million on the street, and so let's make it work. So if you applied before, apply again.
Great.
I see Johnny. I don't know which Johnny there. Can you show the second list of contacts, please? All right, I'm going to try to do that while Justin or somebody's reading other questions we've received.
Yeah, I've got another one here. It's what is an example of how climate change might be specifically introduced into a specific BTO program or activity?
Good, and I see that's from our close friend and colleague, Dan Delory. All right, Dan, where do we start? You probably have your own answer to this, but that's a different matter. I think there's a couple of part answer to this. One is, I want to say, I think generally speaking, that, and Karma, I might ask you to say a few words. I think generally speaking, a greater emphasis on climate change will mean for BTO and ERE a lot of pedal to the metal. It will mean a lot of the things we do, we're going to try to do faster and hopefully even more of. Everything we do at BTO, I think it's fair to say, I think it's precise to say, everything we do at BTO saves energy if it's successful, and therefore it's designed to save energy, and therefore unless you have a system like SMUD that's all hydro and nuclear, then it's going to save CO2 emissions. So everything we do contributes to climate. However, what I suspect will happen in the future, we'll find out together, is that there will be greater urgency and there will be a focus on activities that will have a shorter, quicker payback there, such as the advanced building construction work, such as tech to market and market transformation activities, so we can get those energy saving and climate mitigating technologies into the marketplace. So that's the change I see, Dan. And you know, I hope we'll have more resources and a bigger budget to do that. If we're in a zero-sum game, then those challenges are tough. But I think there will be a change. I suspect there will be a change in the coming years in our portfolio and our foci. And as I said, some things such as low GWP, global warming potential of refrigerants for HVAC, that's, you know, that's separate from the CO2 game. So that's what I see. And of course, the integration of renewables through GEB and connected communities and modeling and sensors and controls, so that we can work with PV and electric vehicles to get more renewables, more affordable, more resilient, more quickly.
Great. Hey, David, I know that we need to move to the next panel because Alex, our guest speaker, he needs to.
All right, so we have Al, thank you. Thank you all. You know where to find me, david.nemso@ee.doe.gov. And I hope, and stay tuned to our website, and look forward to working with you in the coming years.